How's it going, Giants fans? My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. And today we want to discuss Xavier McKinney. He had some really interesting things to say about this team, specifically, essentially, new management compared to old management, thoughts about Evan Neal, thoughts about the new kind of injury protocol that Brian Daboll has installed and the communication he's having with the players to try and mitigate and really just re-aggravate or further aggravate existing injuries. So he gave some really good information. Now, I know people will say this is exactly the same stuff that people said about when Joe Judge was there or whatever it might be. And yes, I do understand that kind of is a reality that players do obviously want to say good things about the current regimen. But I will say this, he did have some disagreements and he kind of talks about the disagreements he had with the old regimen and kind of their process. In addition to that, kind of just discussing the differences, like the primary differences about kind of caring for the players. And speaking about Evan Neal, he said some really great things by him. I really want to dive into that. Before we dive into Xavier McKinney and some really great quotes from an interview with Steve Serbia of the New York Post, Anthony, how are you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm always down to talk about Xavier McKinney. I think he's slowly becoming my favorite player on the New York Giants. I think everything that he provides on the field is amazing. He's super fun to watch, and I really like him as a player and as a person off the field. And I think this is really interesting to see him be so honest in the media and kind of just discussing things very transparently. You often see NFL players when they have regime changes or coaching changes, they'll always say, hey, best in the world to that guy, but I don't want to talk about him. But Xavier McKinney's kind of opening up. He's kind of shedding some insight on what happened in the last regime to kind of clarify how this regime is so much better for him and how he thinks it's going to help the New York Giants, which I think is pretty interesting and super exciting. And really, anytime these players give some insight and some details to the coaches, the management, anything like that, I always find it super interesting. And I'm really excited to dive into some of these quotes and hopefully see Xavier McKinney and the Giants have a big bounce back season after, of course, disappointing couple of years.
Yeah, disappointing is an understatement, if I would say. But let's dive into an interesting quote right off the bat. So the question is, you were used to winning at Alabama. How difficult has it been to deal with losing? And he's like, it's hard. I'll tell you that, man. I know how to win. And I think there was a lot of stuff that we were doing that wasn't a winning mentality. And sometimes it was players. Sometimes it was coaching. It was kind of a mixture of both. I hate losing. I refuse to accept the mentality. And I don't accept it. And I'll tell you what, Xavier McKinney is one of the few bright spots on this Giants roster, specifically on the defensive side. He has shown us that he can be a long-term solution at free safety, and he's going to be a star for us, especially in a Wink Martindale scheme, which he does mention a little bit later on. So I'll give you guys that quote as well. But, coming from Alabama, an NFL caliber, collegiate franchise, essentially, and they are a winning organization. They practice like the NFL. They train like the NFL. And he says a little bit later on, practice makes perfect, and they practice how they play at Alabama. Now, he did say the winning mentality just wasn't there for the Giants last season. I mean, when you're looking at guys taking QB sneaks on second and third down, I can pretty much guarantee there was no winning culture installed for the Giants last year. But just, I'll give you a chance, Anthony, to kind of give your response to the mentality portion of this. It seems like there is definitely a little bit of a change in culture and mentality with the new regimen in place compared to last year. And, what are your thoughts on Xavier McKinney kind of having a change of heart and just kind of feeling like they're heading in the right direction?
I think that's super exciting. Xavier McKinney is slowly becoming a leader on the Giants team and especially their defense. I wouldn't be surprised to see him maybe next year get the captain's patch on his chest because he is a leader and he is one of the best players on the Giants, as you mentioned, a real star on the defense, star in the making at the very least. And I think this is, these quotes here definitely do kind of open your mind to what Xavier McKinney and some of the players might have been feeling last season with all of the losing, especially some of the players that have been here for more than just a couple seasons. Xavier McKinney, of course, was here for both years of Joe Judge's tenure, but really only got involved the last year since he was dealing with the injury in his rookie season. But when you're taking a look at, the losing that the Giants have sustained for so long, just so much losing, and I think it's them and the Dolphins have the longest streaks in the NFL of not reaching the playoffs. And that's something that the Giants fans have gotten really used to, is not making the playoffs. That's not something that Xavier McKinney was used to. He was not used to not reaching the national championship game. If he wasn't reaching the national championship game with Alabama, the season was unsuccessful. So that's a huge difference between playing at Alabama and playing for the lowly New York Giants. And we don't want to see the Giants be lowly anymore. And neither does Xavier McKinney. He wants to get back to his winning ways. And I think there's a lot to be said about Joe Judge and the way that he was able to present himself and present the New York Giants. Because when he got to town, he presented himself as a guy who's going to instill a win-first mentality and only winning mentality and not put up with BS. And that was really just fodder. And it was a lot of BS that Joe Judge spit out there to make fans believe in him. I was one of those fans that really believed in Joe Judge. But at the end of the day, Xavier McKinney and some of the players, it seems, maybe didn't believe in Joe Judge and kind of saw through the BS that we couldn't see through, because all we see is the media hype and what he says in the media. But Xavier McKinney is with those coaches and with those players every single day. So it's all the behind the scenes stuff that we don't see. So when Xavier McKinney is saying there was a losing mentality with this regime and there's a winning mentality with this regime, I do think that's important to take note of. The fact that he's even exposing that from the last regime is super interesting to me. And I am excited for the Giants to finally bring back a winning culture.
Yeah, well, hopefully they can install it. Of course, nothing is really legitimate until we see the wins in the win column. So that definitely is something I do want to mention before we proceed here. But, the next question for Xavier McKinney was, what have you seen about the mentality from the players and the coaches in the offseason that gives you optimism about a winning mentality? So this is the primary kind of point that Xavier McKinney is trying to make. And essentially he has to say, everything starts off with how you practice, man. I come from a place where practice makes perfect. I've lived and died by that. And I think how we practice has been great. A lot of guys are really bought into what we're doing. When you have people bought in, people are going to want to play for you, and people are going to want to go all out for you. If they ain't feeling too good that day, they're going to want to go because they're bought in, because they believe in you, because you live by what you said, and not just saying it just to say it. So I think that's an interesting part right there, is like maybe Judge and all these guys were like kind of just talking and there was no results. So like it didn't really kind of live up to the hype, which a lot of people have now realized, including ourselves. McKinney goes on to say, I think that we've all experienced that so far with the coaches of what we have. They've been very true to what they've said. They haven't lied about anything, and they've taken care of us. So with that, practice has gone great. Meetings have gone great. After every practice, just players are meeting right after practice, trying to figure out, all right, what did we mess up today? What mental errors did we have today? What can we improve? What call is better in this area? What type of stuff goes a long way? We didn't really have much of that these last 2 years, and that was a big problem. That came with obviously a lot of, like, everything didn't look organized. Even defensively, there were times we played good, but sometimes the communication wasn't there, and that's because everyone was kind of on a different kind of mentality or mindset. It was a lot of different things going on, but now it's not like that, man. Everybody's trying to be on one accord. Everyone's trying to get out there and make plays. They're not worried about messing up, and they're just trying to get better. So obviously that was a very long quote, so I apologize for that. But when you're actually looking at what he's saying, the one word that keeps popping into my head is just communication. Right? The coaches aren't forcing the players to do everything. They want the players to speak among themselves. They want the players to be leading. They want the players to be involved, to be speaking with one another, to be building kind of rapport. And look, I thought Patrick Graham in the defense was pretty good. If they can be even better this year, I mean, that's a huge step forward for the Giants team. I mean, they've had to pick up a lot of slack on the offensive side, obviously. But I think the communication, both offense and defense, is going to be a huge benefit for the entire team in general, and just having a lot more respect for the process. I think that the coaching staff tried to be a little bit too disciplinary, which is what Joe Judge tried to kind of install, this disciplinary, authoritative style. And I think the players were like, okay, let's give it a shot. We'll buy into it. And then when it wasn't working and they were losing games, they were getting blown out, they kind of were like, okay, this isn't working. And then they just kind of stopped trying. We saw so many times where players just gave up on plays, and we were like, okay, that should not be happening. They're not fighting. And I think that's kind of what we're going to see change this year, is just they're going to go all out. They're going to fight until the final whistle. This isn't going to be a team that gives up and lays down and they just get blown out the rest of the game. They're going to be in most games, even if they're losing. So I think that's kind of what I expect going forward, especially from what Xavier McKinney is saying, Anthony. But what is your opinion on this? Just the difference in communication and kind of the practice habits they've installed that seem to be a little bit better.
Communication is everything, and that goes for pretty much every aspect of life, including football and including success in terms of coaching, in terms of calling plays. And I think a lack of communication is something that we saw pretty consistently with the Giants in Joe Judge's era, because you would see plays where, I mean, first of all, there's been a lot of players that have said that the playbook wasn't very collaborative, that they did feel like they were in a box. And now you have new coaches saying there's more freedom and more communication between players like Daniel Jones and coaches like Mike Kafka. I think all of that stuff is very noticeable. But also what was noticeable when Joe Judge was in town was there seemed to be plays that, Jason Garrett would call and Joe Judge didn't know it was being called, or Joe Judge called it and it went over somebody's head, and there were timeouts that were used at the wrong times, and sometimes there was missed timeouts and challenge flags, all this kind of crap, like as if it was almost Joe Judge just running the team and not communicating with everybody before making these decisions. And that was very weird. And that did cause a lot of problems in terms of the coaching and in terms of the success of the team. So I definitely think communication has been a problem for the Giants in the past, but now it does look like there's just one singular brain trust. The hive mind is getting to work here with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll coming over from Buffalo. They already have a working relationship. The communication is already proven to be really solid between those two. And it seems like all of the other assistant coaches that have been brought onto the staff have been communicating really well with Brian Daboll, Joe Schoen. Everybody involved seems to be really on board and on the same wavelength. And I think that's super exciting. It should allow the Giants to have a lot more consistency and hopefully improve their performances on the field.
Absolutely. So let's take a look at the specifics about, the difference in practice from this year to last year. So Xavier McKinney said, we are practicing a lot harder. Everybody is locked in. Everybody is paying attention to details. The intensity is high all the time. Everybody is tired of losing. So am I. I think that's what it is. Everybody's made it clear, like, we don't want to lose. We don't come here to lose games. We come here to win games. Credit to the coaches too, because when they came in, what did they tell us? What they told us was, make sure you run to the ball every play, no matter if you're tired, no matter if you're a D lineman, no matter if you're a linebacker, no matter if you're a safety on the other side, no matter if you're a corner, make sure you run to the ball. Once we got that message, everybody was all in with that, and everybody ran to the ball. It didn't matter how tired we were. It didn't matter what day it was. It didn't matter if we had a bad day. It didn't matter if we had a good day. That's one of the biggest things on the defensive side that's happened. All 11 swarming to the ball every single play. And I'll tell you what, that's the good time. That's the good kind of conditioning you want to install on a football field. Okay. We've learned, like, at first when we started to do when Joe Judge implemented the consequences of running laps, I was like, oh, this is kind of funny. Like they're a professional athlete. They should be able to run laps. Man, I was wrong. Apparently you don't do that to professional athletes. You're supposed to make them practice hard, but you don't want to force consequences, punishments on them like they're children. So I've definitely learned something from that, and something I will go into the future and say, if I see that again, that is not a good idea, unless you're Bill Belichick and everybody has to follow the rules because you are one of the best coaches of all time. Joe Judge is far from that. So I will say what stands out to me is that they're practicing like just good habits that will translate to games, right? Running laps because of it's a punishment, it does not have any positive impact on a game whatsoever. It does not impact a game. But swarming to the ball, running full speed to the ball, that has an impact, a positive impact on every single game. Because if that ball gets loose and there's a fumble and everyone's swarming, the probability of getting that turnover skyrockets, probably 11 times, because you have 11 guys swarming to the football. So I'd say that's probably a huge benefit, and it is a positive kind of habit that they're creating, instead of one that just doesn't really benefit anybody, but just kind of creates this weird like dynamic that the players now don't like the coaches because they're forcing like physical consequences on them for making mistakes, which practice is for mistakes, by the way. Making a mistake in practice is the best thing you can do, but it's not in the game. You learn from that. So I think that I've learned, especially guys like Xavier McKinney have learned what good practice habits look like, Anthony. So how does that make you feel that the practicing just seems to be kind of going better in terms of, installing good habits for the future?
I think that's super important because practice has seemingly been an issue for the Giants for years now. If you think all the way back to even Ben McAdoo, when Ben McAdoo was in town, after he was fired, some players were like, yeah, there was a lot of really weird practice habits. Sometimes we were practicing at like 90% strength on Saturdays right before getting on a plane and going to play a full game on Sunday. And that was like, what? Is that real? And apparently that was real. I think it was Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie that enlightened us on that information. And there's always just such interesting little tidbits that we gain when coaches are fired from, players who were unhappy. And I do think this is interesting now. Xavier McKinney, young player, he's only entering his third season. His rookie season, he barely even played. So he is a very young player. He's new to the NFL, but he's already stepping up as a leader and already being really friendly with the media and being very transparent. And I do really like that. But I think when you're taking a look at some of the things that he's saying here in terms of with the coaches making sure that everybody knows where to go, the organization of the practice is something that he really hit on, and making sure everybody knows where to go. Everyone's not just running around and not knowing where to go. See how the coaches are implementing things and they're actually doing and going about things. It's a night and day difference. I think that is super important because that kind of falls in line with what we were just talking about with communication. having good communication means that you're organized. And what Xavier McKinney is also talking about here is organization during practices. So, and it's also got a lot to do with everybody not knowing where they're going or knowing where they're going in this regime. That is about communication and organization. So what I'm really starting to picture here is that the Giants last year and the year before were a very disorganized team with a lack of strong communication, and there was a lot of not knowing. Now it seems like the Giants have a lot of knowing. The players know what's expected of them. They know what they're required to do. The coaches know where they're going to be putting players and where they're going to be doing this and that. And I think that's super important. Just having a more organized team makes you feel organized, united, and be more of a team together, which is, of course, something that you need. Having chemistry, building chemistry, and becoming a good football team. The organization is super important. Joe Judge wanted to be the fake Bill Belichick. Really, at the end of the day, he wanted to try and be like Bill Belichick. Well, one thing we all know about Bill Belichick is he is organized. He never misses the little details. He has them all figured out, down packed. And that's something that the Giants seem to be trying to figure out, is how to get all of that organization hammered home and get all those details ironed out.
Yeah, man. And part of the details they need to get ironed out is how to keep guys healthy, right? That's a big one. And Xavier McKinney was asked this, like, are they feeling wore down during practice physically? And he said, they've done a great job of taking care of us. Daves has done a great job of communicating with us. There are some days where we come in and he talks to me and he's like, how's the defense feeling? Are guys tired? There's some things where it was like, we're sore. He would make sure that they chopped some stuff down, that we weren't putting so much on our bodies. That really sunk in with us because it told us that he actually cared about how we felt. Because some coaches, they'll ask you like, are you good? And then you say, nah, not really. And they'll do the same thing. So all right. Like, why did you ask me if you were not going to change anything? So like with him, he'll ask and he'll actually stand true to that. When you give and everybody your word and you actually live by it, that means a whole lot more than when you don't. So that seems like a kind of a direct shot, because the only other head coach that he's had in his career is Joe Judge. And during his days at Alabama, he was healthy. So they clearly listened at the collegiate level. It seems like Joe Judge just didn't care if guys were hurt. He would make them do the same things over and over again, no matter what. So, it seems like, he mentioned how well they practiced at Alabama, a winning culture. They did things all the right way. And then suddenly things go the wrong way. And like that's the only like bad kind of example he can pull from. So all these bad things he's saying, all these things like coaches do this, coaches do that, like it kind of makes me feel like he's talking about last regimen, at least from my perspective. I could be wrong, but it has that feel to it. So, you're hearing a lot of what they didn't do and some kind of intricate details that are changing now with Brian Daboll. So another question regarding Wink Martindale and the new defense that they're installing. Basically, Steve Serby asked, what have you learned about defensive coordinator Wink Martindale? And Xavier McKinney said he's had an open mind to everybody's ideas. He's an easy guy to talk to. What we love as a defense, we're able to just go out there and be playmakers. You don't have to worry about making a mistake on third down or a fourth down or something like that. He just wants us to go out there and play. And I think that's what we've missed obviously the past 2 years. Even though we were really good defensively, I think everybody could tell you on the defensive side, everyone was so afraid of being the one to make the mistake instead of just actually going out there and playing. Because mainly the Giants played that bend, don't break type of defense. So if you made a mistake, like it was your fault. I think this, like the aggressiveness of this, like there's going to be mistakes. Like you go into this process of being an aggressive cover one, heavy man coverage, blitzing defense, knowing you're going to get beat over top sometimes. Like, and that is okay, because that's just the consequence of playing such a high aggressive style defense. But the turnovers improve. The turnovers increase. The probability increases tremendously. A lot more third and long. So yes, you might get beat every now and then, but you're also going to create more turnovers. And you're also going to get better field position for your offense. So those are things that kind of come with the territory of playing this defense that Wink Martindale does install. And, the blitzing is definitely going to play a much bigger part. He did say, yeah, man, I do think there's going to be more blitzing. I think this system will be able to play in different roles. I'm definitely prepared and ready to go back to blitzing. I haven't blitzed in 2 years, so it'll be fun. I was really good at it. So I know, Anthony, you remember when you used to kind of, you recorded that video 2 years ago about Xavier McKinney talking about how he gets into the box. He gets to the line of scrimmage. He can do a lot of things. How exciting is this for you to know that they're going to start to utilize him the way he's supposed to be utilized, not just force feed him as a free safety? It's kind of exciting to think about.
Yeah, I'm thrilled thinking about Xavier McKinney in this Wink Martindale defense. I know I've referenced it every single time we've done a video on Xavier McKinney. That film breakdown that you just mentioned that I did the offseason leading it into Xavier McKinney's rookie season, I said Xavier McKinney will be a star for the Giants. Here's why. And one of the things that I did touch on in that video was his ability to rush the passer. And it was really interesting because as a safety, he knew how to get to the quarterback and apply pressure to the quarterback. He was really good at it. He was great to bring on the blitzes off the edge, just being that safety blitz or that slot cornerback blitz. Xavier McKinney's really good at that. He's quick enough to get into the backfield quickly, and he's strong, and he knows how to get off of blockers. And he had some really extraordinary plays as a pass rusher during his time at Alabama. And unfortunately, no, we haven't seen him utilized as a blitzer in the first 2 years of his career. Again, his rookie season, he didn't play that much, but year two, he was on the field a lot. He had a phenomenal season, a breakout sophomore campaign, and we should have seen him used in a much larger variety of ways. We should have seen a whole lot more from Xavier McKinney. We shouldn't have just seen him playing on the back end all the time. We should have seen him getting in the box and applying pressure to the quarterback, because that's something that he has in his skill set. And that's something that we absolutely will see with Wink Martindale. Wink Martindale is going to send blitzes that you can't even see coming, even if you are Tom Brady or whoever. Wink Martindale is known for that. He sends some crazy blitzes that no one can see coming. They're creative blitz packages that you just never see coming. And so with Xavier McKinney, you're going to see plays where you think that he's just lining up in the slot to play man-on-man against a really good slot wide receiver, and then all of a sudden he's in the backfield getting a sack. Things like that are going to happen in Wink Martindale's defense. It's going to be exciting. They will take risks, and sometimes they will get beat over top, and they might get blown out in games because the game plan was wrong on the defensive side of the ball. But it's always risk-reward, high risk and high reward. Yeah, the Giants might get beat over the top sometimes, but they're also going to get some sack fumbles because Kayvon Thibodeau is going to come around the edge, and there was already a random blitzer coming from this side, so they never saw Kayvon Thibodeau coming from the blind side. So there's going to be a lot of fun stuff going on in Wink Martindale's defense. I think that Xavier McKinney is really going to be the leader of the defense. He's not the captain just yet, but I do think he's going to earn that stripe this year. I think he's going to have a lot of work to do in this defense. He's going to be used in a variety of ways, and I'm super excited to see Wink Martindale unlock the next level of Xavier McKinney.
Yeah, man. If he could really unlock, I mean, we already know what Xavier McKinney can do as a kind of a zone coverage free safety roaming in the backfield. Now you get him involved as a blitzer. We haven't even seen the real potential of Xavier McKinney. I mean, Brian Walker, our guy, was training with him the other day, and he was like, the guy moves like a cornerback. Like you could put him out wide. He has such nimble and quick hips. Just amazing athlete, and he's legit. And I think this season he's going to really show out. Speaking of Kayvon Thibodeau, he said about him, he was back there a lot of OTAs. I like watching him do his thing. He's been great, a great rook so far. We just got to make sure that he brings them snacks up come camp time. We love him. He's definitely got a lot of character in him, and that's what we want, and that's what we need, honestly. So that's really good. About Aaron Robinson, I've always pushed him to another level just because I know we're going to need him, what we're going to need from him, and he knows that. And Dane Belton had some really good things to say about him. He said, that's almost like my brother. I feel like that already. I've been just pushing him in everything as far as watching film, coming out of his breaks better, everything. I pretty much nitpick with him just because I know how good he can be. A lot of what I see in him now is kind of how I was when I was a rookie, how I felt like I was talent-wise, and I think he's got the same ability, the same skill set. So Dane Belton, not the best in man coverage, but a really good short to intermediate zone coverage safety. Can do a lot of things, line up in the slot, hard hitter. He can play in the box. He does remind me a little bit of Xavier McKinney, but less of a kind of a free safety, skill set. So I'd expect to see him a lot more in the box, kind of playing down there and trying to stop the run and do some good things in zone coverage during the hybrid kind of section of this scheme. But one last thing I will give you guys, actually two last things. So I'll read these off, Anthony. You give me your perspective on them, and then we'll wrap it up. So he said about rookie Evan Neal, which he was his former teammate at Alabama, you would never question how hard this dude plays. He's the definition of like a dog. He can literally destroy you, which I love to hear. He's one of those guys that if you're going to war, you want to bring him with you. I mean, the guy is 360 pounds. I mean, yes, the guy could take a freaking missile to the gut and he'd be fine. So I definitely would want him by my side in battle. But then he spoke about Wandel Robinson, our rookie out of Kentucky. He said, obviously, I got to play with Jalen Waddle in college, and he was the closest thing that I've seen to Waddle, just his explosiveness, how he moves, how he runs his routes, how fast he is, how quick he is. So that's big. I mean, when you're talking about Wandel Robinson comparison to Jalen Waddle, I think it's a little bit out there right now, but the quickness and speed there is definitely exciting to think about and what he can do on offense. So you're hearing it from Xavier McKinney, who's an elite safety in our perspective. So I think that that's a good sign that Wandel can make a big impact on this team. What are your thoughts on his perception and perspective of Evan Neal and Wandel Robinson?
I think they're both exciting pieces of insight that Xavier McKinney is giving. Of course, I really like to hear him say that Evan Neal has that dog in him. That's cool. I think Evan Neal is going to be really, really great for the Giants as early as day one. He does have that dog in him. You could see it on his film at Alabama. He likes to really plow people over and, throw out some pancakes like he's working at IHOP. He's a really great player, and I'm super excited to see him get to work. But Wandel Robinson is kind of a wild card for me because I didn't think he was the best pick in the second round for the Giants. And I think he's a very interesting player because he's got some pretty obvious flaws in his game, but he's also got some pretty obvious strengths. And it's going to be interesting to see which one of those outweighs the other, the strengths or the weaknesses. And for Xavier McKinney, kind of making this comparison to Jalen Waddle, it's almost hard to really see that for me right now, to see that comparison. But let's see, how it takes shape on the football field. Maybe the Giants are planning to use him in a role similar to how the Dolphins use Jalen Waddle, and maybe it will help unlock a new level of Wandale Robinson. That could be super interesting. And I think that Wandale Robinson is super fast, and he's that guy that you want to give the ball to in space, similar to Jalen Waddle. But there are different things in their game. Like Jalen Waddle was a very good route runner, and he was super quick, like one of the quickest players that you'll ever see on the field during his time at Alabama. So I don't really know if I see this comparison too much, but I'm hoping to see this comparison. I'm hoping to see this come to fruition, because if we're getting a player that has similar abilities to Jalen Waddle, the thing about Jalen Waddle is that he has abilities that nobody else has, which makes him so special. So if we're getting a player like that in Wandale Robinson, then he too can become special and become a really big impact player in the Giants offense.
Absolutely, guys. But I'd love to hear your perspectives below on Xavier McKinney, what he's had to say about this regimen. Of course, we've kind of heard similar things in the past from other players, but now that he's seen what bad looks like, we can hope that, they've learned a couple things and the new regimen is a lot better. It's polarizing, to say the least. I mean, Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen are pretty much the polar opposites of Dave Gettleman and Joe Judge in terms of just like the way that they approach things, the advanced analytics, the personalities, the caring of the players, a little bit different. So I'm excited to see where the team can go. Obviously, training camp is starting up here in a couple of days. Really excited about that. We'll get you guys all of the relevant and exciting new information coming out on the daily, of course. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.